The EcoFlow River 3 is a popular, compact, and affordable little unit. It's designed to power small devices like your phone or your laptop when you're on the go. It claims it can power your Wi-Fi router or a light bulb for 31 hours. We'll see about that. But regardless, a unit like this would actually make a great gift, especially with Black Friday coming up. A unit like this also has a ton of competition. So welcome back to the lab where our opinions cannot be bought. The River 3 is actually the smallest of the 3 new River products. There's also the Plus and the Max. As always, if you want to check this thing out a little bit more, we have some links in the description as well as any coupon codes we're able to squeeze out of EcoFlow. I think actually Black Friday coming up, we have some exclusive ones that maybe can release right now, maybe have to wait till Friday to release. Anyways, let's see if the River 3 might be a good fit for you, starting with a super quick 60-second spec teardown in case you're not already familiar with the new River 3. First up, this thing passes the tiny baby lift test. It only weighs 7.4 pounds. He could shot put this thing from here to Hong Kong. It's a 245 watt hour battery bank with a 300 watt inverter with a 600 watt rating for X-Boost, but X-Boost is fake, we all know that. And overall, this is a super simple unit. Underneath the little door flap right here, you have a 110 watt solar input as well as a 320 watt AC input. So you can just plug this thing into a wall outlet in your house and it claims it charges in less than 1 hour. And then on the front right here, you have two 120 volt house plugs. One of them has a ground, one of them does not. You have two USB-A's as well as a 100 watt USB-C, which is pretty good. And you also have a 12 volt car socket right behind this little door. That's it. The screen is actually pretty nice. It's very simple. It's a little bit different than EcoFlow's current style, but I guess it has to be jammed up in a tiny little display like that. This thing works seamlessly with the app. The app gives you access to some extra stuff. There's not a whole lot of secret stuff going on with this guy. And this thing costs $239. At the time of this video, I think it's already on like a pre-Black Friday sale. It's like $179. We also have some sort of discount code that you can throw on top of that. So EcoFlow does the thing EcoFlow does. Who knows what the price will ever be on this, but even if they brought it up to full price, it's still a relatively affordable unit. Before we jump into the results of the testing we put this thing through, I want to share with you guys the things that we really like about the new River 3. Starting with this being really cheap and just tiny, really small. It's a great unit for emergency backup. We here at the lab actually have the old River plugged in to the wall with our Wi-Fi router, our security camera, HomePod thing plugged into it. So if we ever have a power outage, we still have Wi-Fi and we still have our security cameras up and running. And so buying something small and little like this just for the UPS, the uninterrupted power supply feature, is a great option. I also really like that this unit is dead silent. That makes it really good for camping. You can have this thing right inside of your tent, right close to you, and you're not gonna hear it. It's not gonna make any noise, or you could just run it close by, whatever. EcoFlow has a history of having really loud units, and this one, very quiet. I also like that all the plugs and the ports and everything are on these two sides, so you can kind of jam it in a corner like this, throw stuff on top of it, whatever. It's a tiny little unit, and you still can access everything really easily. And this thing is just not trying to be anything that it isn't. It's tiny and frankly idiot-proof. There's minimal buttons, there's minimal ports, there's really not a lot going on with this. It would take a lot to mess up trying to use this thing. When it comes to things that we don't like with this though, I'm always gonna hit on X-Boost whenever we're talking about EcoFlow. X-Boost basically pulls voltage so that it can increase the output. The result of that is you don't have whatever you're trying to run at that increased output. It's not running properly because it's not getting full voltage. So in some of the bigger units, you can hear that when you turn on a heat gun, you can hear it kind of wind down. In this case, this thing advertises that you can run a toaster on it with the X-Boost mode, but your toaster is not gonna be getting full wattage, so it's not gonna toast your bread properly, and there's no point. Like, it just, X-Boost is not the best feature. I actually plugged the River Mini into this to charge it, and then I had a light bulb plugged into the River Mini. And you could see that when the River Mini was trying to charge off of this guy with X-Boost mode on, the light bulb would get bright and then it would dim and then it would get bright and then it would dim, and the Mini was kept recycling, turning itself back on because it just didn't know how to act when it was getting limited voltage. So some things like a light bulb, maybe it'll just run dim, but if you're trying to run any kind of electronics or anything off of that, anything that requires consistent power over like 300 watts, it's just not going to perform the way that it's meant to, and you might not be happy with that. So X-Boost is fake. If it says 300 watts, just take that as like the face value of what it'll actually do. something else I don't like about this is that there's only two 120 volt ports, which is only like one behind some of the competition, but these are really close together. And I found that when you're trying to run two plugs at the same time, unless they don't have a ground, typically they jam into each other. So I would have like a light plugged into here and then try to plug a grounded plug into the top one, and they would slam into each other and you have to kind of like bend them a bit to get them in. I don't know, it's just weird. Okay, there's only two plugs and they're so close together. I don't understand it. But I mean, I guess good job for flipping that upside down so you can still plug stuff into it. I also just don't like that there's no light. A little unit like this, it'd be pretty easy to walk around with it and your phone out at the same time. But a lot of times when the power's out and you're carrying things around, it'd be nice if the thing you're carrying around had a light built into it, especially when that's its main purpose. EcoFlow, just figure it out. Start putting some lights on your units. It's just, come on. You're like the only company not giving us lights. And also, no wireless phone pad. That probably is gonna come out with either the Plus or the Max. But we've seen it historically on some of the other rivers, and there's like a huge amount of real estate right here. That's just kind of like a first world problem, I think, complaining about no phone charging pad. But hey, what are you doing? When it comes to our testing though, even with a very cheap and small unit like this, you want to make sure that it's going to perform as advertised. So the first thing that we want to know is efficiency. If this unit says it has a 245 watt hour battery and you plug in a 245 watt load, it should last about an hour. If it's 100% efficient, most things are not. So we ran a 273 watt load on this guy, which is right near the maximum amount of the inverter, so it was working as hard as possible. And it should have lasted about 54 minutes. It actually lasted about 45 minutes, which is around 83% efficient, which for a tiny little unit like this, that's not too bad. And with efficiency, EcoFlow also claims on their website that it can run a 3 watt light bulb or a Wi-Fi router for 30.8 hours, which is a really random thing. I don't know who needs to run a light bulb singly for 31 hours, but we decided to test it because why not? So we have a 4 watt light bulb. And 4 watts, 3 watts, anything that low is so small that the inverter screen doesn't even recognize a load. But you can see once we plugged our power meter in, it was in fact pulling about 3.6 watts. So we went ahead and plugged that in to see what would happen. It turned itself off after 12 hours because there's some stupid setting that comes pre-programmed for the whole unit to just shut off after 12 hours. And once I went through and deleted that setting, we tried again, plugged in 3.6 watt light bulb and just let it rip. And this thing actually lasted for 1 day, 1 hour and 54 minutes, which is about 26 hours, which is actually almost right on par with what it advertised. 3.6 watt light bulb for 26 hours is basically a 3 watt light bulb for 31 hours. I don't know who that helps at all, but what that means to me is that EcoFlow isn't inflating things on their website as much as they used to in the past. Also, our Wi-Fi router takes like 12 to 13 watts. So I don't know whose Wi-Fi router only takes 3 watts. It's not gonna run a Wi-Fi router for that long. A little light bulb, maybe. They also claim that this thing can charge 0 to full in about an hour. We ran it through a charge speed test. It was completely drained, plugged it into the wall and just let it rip. It took about an hour and 20 minutes, which I thought was interesting. Usually EcoFlow is a little bit more on par with their testing. So we actually did that test a second time after we'd been beating on the unit all day and the unit was already warm. And in that test, it actually charged 0 to full in about 58 minutes. So I guess the takeaway is there is some variance. If it's colder, once it's warm, it'll do exactly as advertised. Weird, but almost perfect. In terms of surging this unit, I don't really think small units are meant for that, but we plugged in a 350 watt load and it ran for about 10 seconds. Anything more than that though, and it's just a quick blip, you could see it just some things we would plug in, turn them on, and they would instantly it would just say overloaded. Our fridge doesn't even surge at 600 watts. But when you plug this in, the fridge does a quick cycle of all of its settings. It does try to surge and this doesn't even let it, just completely has an aneurysm and just shuts right off. So the surge is what it is. It's a tiny unit, don't beat on it. In terms of the sound test, like we already said, it is dead silent. Solar input works. It's only 110 watts, so it's not gonna blow your mind, but it does what it says it does. On their website, they're bundling this with like a 45 watt little foldable panel, which is cool. It fits in your backpack, but it's so dumb. Like that's gonna take forever, like 6 hours or something to charge this. I would not do that. 6 hours to charge a unit that's barely gonna last an hour, depending what you're doing. Pass-through works. You can have solar going into this or AC power from the wall going into this while still powering the load that you had running, which is good. So at the end of the day, this is a pretty solid little unit. I think that EcoFlow has done a good job of staying in line with the history of the River products and keeping this one just smaller, more compact, but still performing pretty well. As EcoFlow does, their pricing is everywhere. And who knows, Black Friday's coming up. I would say just, check it out, keep your eye on it with Black Friday coming in. You might be able to get this thing for a wicked price. If you're still unsure, we actually just made a video of our favorite small power stations of 2024, so you guys can go in the description, click that video, check it out, maybe see some other things that you might not know about yet. Otherwise, that is all we got for you guys. I will catch you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out and stay charged.